Well, they closed down the mill and they closed down the mine. They said you can't work but pay your taxes on time. Got 3 little babies gonna starve to death or freeze. We started making white lightning, it was Grandpa's recipe. Run, rebel, run to no avail. Run, rebel, run to the Scott County Jail.
Hey everyone, happy Thursday night, happy mid-May. You're watching the Jailhouse Informant and you're locked in for the next hour. Well, maybe probably not hour, but next little bit with me and my host, Dr. Christy Sumner.
Hey, how are you, everybody? Thank you for joining us tonight. Going to be kind of a low-key Jailhouse Informant podcast tonight. We're going to replay one of the episodes that we recorded a little bit earlier. Well, actually last year, this week last year.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. So one of our first Jailhouse Informants. But we wanted to come on, say hello to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. As Miranda said, we are, my gosh, midway through May. I just don't understand how that happens, but here we are.
Yeah. So, if you watched last week, we had a great, very, very fun guest from Charlotte. From Charlotte County, Canada, New Brunswick. Yeah. And we were working on our continuing our series that we do here with other jails. And so we had Felicity on here and we actually went a little bit longer and had a great time. I mean, she was just such a great guest with lots of good stories and stuff. So if you didn't catch that episode, we definitely recommend you go back and check that out, as well as some of our past episodes where we've highlighted other jails from around the world.
Yeah. And as Miranda said, we're going to be continuing on with that series, but, we've reached out to so many different jails across the world, actually. And, finding schedules that mesh and getting people to actually respond is a little bit more daunting than we anticipated. So we're still working on it. We have several lined up down for the next couple of weeks, but just bear with us on that. But it's a great series. We absolutely love it, and you all in the audience are so great with asking questions and just throwing out different topics of conversation with those guests. So thank you for supporting us with this series.
Yeah, and I mean it's kind of cool to not do it every week in a row, to kind of change things up, and because if we did it every week, it would get a little bit boring. So you're stuck this week with just us. We're going to be talking about a little bit of the history and talking about, or not history, I'm sorry, a little bit of things, news and stuff that's going on. And then we'll get into what we were talking about with our law enforcement Memorial Week. And so, if you do have a jail or know of a historic location like that you would like for us to highlight on the show, we would love for you to reach out to us. Because like Chris said, it's kind of hard sometimes getting the responses. And then, of course, kind of take it for granted. We're on here every week. Some of us doing multiple shows a week and stuff. Some of the people that we're talking to aren't used to doing podcasts. So I think there may be a little bit of intimidation from people who's never done it before. Hey,
there's Felicity right
there. Hey,
misdemeanor.
Yeah, misdemeanor. So she says, let's see here. Yeah, that's the cool thing about what she does on her page with her tours and stuff. They actually post some of the different evidence that's been captured there at the jail. So if you guys want to catch up and see what's going on to our friends to the north there in Canada in their jail and some of the activity they're having, definitely go like and follow their page. But Yeah, so a lot going on.
Yeah, a lot going on. Thank you all for joining us. Like we said, so first things first, next week, I will actually be presenting at the Anderson County Historical Society. I will be talking on historic preservation through After Dark Tourism. So I did post that on my page. So if you want any information, just go to my page and you'll be able to see when that is. If you're in the Anderson County, Tennessee area, it's open to the public. Or if you have a historical location or museum, or if you're a town that's looking for alternate sources of revenue and want to do it through unique means, After Dark Tourism is a $30 billion a year industry. So I'd love to chat with you about that and see how we can get a talk or a presentation in your area regarding After Dark Tourism.
Yeah, because everybody succeeds with this. Mm-hmm. It's not just the historic location. I mean, it's, as Chris has said multiple times, the gas stations, the hotels, the restaurants, mm-hmm. It works out really well for everybody involved in that. And it's just a great program to get involved with. Mm-hmm. So those of you here in East Tennessee, that is the Oak Ridge area as far as Anderson County. So
you'll be over in Clinton.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So Clinton and Oak Ridge, all of that area over there, go see Chris next Thursday night.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Let's see. So we are actually going to be closed coming up this Saturday. We have been putting the information out there, but we will be closed because we are going to be part of the Paranormal Places meet and greet that's going to take place this coming Saturday from 3:30 p.m. Central to 7 p.m. So 4:30 to 8 this time. But since we have about a 3.5-hour drive all the way up to Franklin, Kentucky, we're going to have to be closed during the day. So real excited to be a part of this because so many great paranormal places are going to be represented at this event that's going to take place at the Simpson County Historical Society and Old Stone Jail up there in Franklin, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, and there's going to be a lot of great paranormal investigators there. A lot of our friends will be there in the paranormal. So if you're in the area, stop by and say hey at least. But Old South Pittsburgh Hospital and Old Historic Harriman Hospital, Ronnie D will be there. Bear from Octagon Hall.
Beth Allen.
Yeah, Beth Allen, Todd and Leanne Eskew, the Packs from Fort Duffield. I'll be talking about historic rugby. Miranda will be talking about the historic Scott County Jail. So there's going to be so many great people. It's going to be a lot of fun. Just a really good place to fellowship with other people in the paranormal community. So I'm really excited that we were asked to speak here. So I think it's going to be a great event.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, they had VIP tickets for the ghost hunt that's going to be at the Old Stone Jail and the Historical Society there, but it is sold out. Mm-hmm. And that's going to take place after the fact. But from what I'm understanding, there's going to be lots of booths with lots of vendors. Mm-hmm. And I know we're going to have historic Rugby After Dark, historic Scott County Jail, Soul Sisters, and Ghost Biker merchandise that's going to be here. And we'll even have the calendar open to where if you want to book either a guided ghost hunt or book a paranormal investigation on the spot, you'll be able to do that as well there at the event. So we'll be hooked up for that.
Yeah. So like I said, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to that and meeting and seeing all of our friends in the paranormal. So like I said, if you're in the area, please stop by. We'd love to see you.
Yeah. And if you watched some of you I know tuned in on the Ghost Biker Garage last week, I had Chanel from Elite Vixen Paranormal on the show, and she went into a lot of detail about the event. So if you do want to go back and watch that, you can see that there on the Ghost Biker Explorations page. Mm-hmm. It looks like the Eskews say they'll be there only briefly.
Oh, they're just going to make an appearance. All right, Todd and Leanne, we see how you are.
So they're over the events there at the Bell Witch Cave. So
yeah, that's another great location. I know there'll be information about that. I'm sure they're at the Paranormal Places meet and greet. But if you haven't experienced the Bell Witch Cave, get with Todd and Leanne Eskew because they run the events and the investigations and stuff and the tours over there. So a great location to check out.
Yeah, for sure. And I just want to say real quick to a
Hey,
former
Henry
guest
Lee.
on the show that was on here talking about the old Gilchrist County Jail there, Henry Lee.
Yeah, and he's done a
Welcome.
great job. You know, he put in a lot of hard work to get the historic Gilchrist County Jail on the National Register. So the Gilchrist County Jail in Gilchrist County, Florida, in Trenton, Florida, a great location. I know Miranda and I, we both investigated it. And if anybody asked me what my most active location of investigation was, I'd have to say the Gilchrist County Jail, because it's an amazing location. But Henry Lee has done an amazing job getting that up and running with the tours and getting it on the National Register. So kudos to him for taking up that mantle and getting it done.
Yeah, a lot of hard work going. He started really from the ground up on that, and just doing some amazing work on that. Let's see here. And once he gets a few more things going on that, we'll have to have him back on the show to share.
About it.
Yeah. So we've kind of talked a little bit about some things that we've got coming up, something that really, really excited to announce that's going to actually end up going live probably later tonight. And if you followed the page, you've seen that we've done this in the past. We offer motorcycle rides here at the historic Scott County Jail. And we are partnering there with RM Brooks General Store. They're doing a biker appreciation event. All this is going to take place on June 1st. And so we are hosting a rolling through history ride and museum tour. And so it's going to be kickstands up at 10 a.m. and that's Eastern time. I guess I need to add that Eastern on there.
Yeah.
But it's going to be 10 a.m. Eastern time. It's going to be $25 per rider. And what this actually gets you is we're going to be starting down in Harriman, Tennessee, and it's going to be a 98-mile motorcycle ride. And there's going to be a 1-hour stop at the historic RM Brooks General Store, which that's just a treat in and of itself to be able to stop there and see Tiffany Terry and the girls that work there. But they're going to have live music, and they have made a special sticker for our bikers that they're going to be giving out. And then we're going to load up on the bikes after our hour stop, and we're going to head on. That's technically about the halfway point. I'm not going to get into the whole map of the ride right now, but the other halfway point will be about another hour's ride, and it's going to end here at the historic Scott County Jail. And with that, you're going to get a souvenir poker chip, and you're also going to get a tour of the jail itself.
A guided tour.
Yep, a guided tour. And those tours, they last around an hour to a little bit longer. This is not a haunted ride or anything. This is just straight up history. And so we've got the link where you'll be able to purchase those. That link will go live tonight, and we do need to have the tickets purchased in advance. The last time we did this, the ride sold out pretty quick. We had right at about 20 bikes. I think we had a couple extra join the day of, and within reason, we can possibly do that day, but it has to be within reason. Because I know we've had several rides that we've done that have had way many more sign up the day of the event. And that's just kind of hard to manage. So we're going to actually be offering these rides throughout the summer. This one is a special one with Brooks, but I also want to make sure to pull up the, give me 1 second to get this shared. But we will be offering these throughout the year. Primarily during the summer and fall, because pretty much here at the jail, you can go in any direction, and there are some beautiful and amazing roads. This one is the picture we've got up there on the screen. That will be our stop there at Brooks General Store. So if you're interested in joining us on that, just kind of stay tuned, watch the page, and we'll have that information where it's all going live. Like I said, it should be tonight that goes live. There's just some logistics with tickets and stuff we've got to get all of that worked out. So
yeah, so I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you ride and you're in the area here in East Tennessee, just come on out. It's going to be a great ride. As Miranda said, we're going to have a lot of historical stops, taking you through some great country to see some amazing sights and such. So and you can't beat lunch at R.M. Brooks store. I mean, they've been voted the best bologna sandwich in East Tennessee.
Yeah. So lots of really cool things going on with that. But that is one big one that we've got going on. And then also, I think there may still be a few tickets left for our teacher event that's going to be taking place on, I believe,
June 18th.
June 18th.
Yep,
okay.
Tuesday, June 18th. So we have partnered with the Tennessee State Museum out of Nashville. This is a really cool honor for us to be associated with them and to be their partner in this area. So what we're offering through them is a free teacher workshop. So if you're a teacher, this does count for continuing education credits as well, the event will be held at the town hall here in Huntsville. And the theme this year is the tools that built Tennessee. And this is a really cool hands-on learning experience. The Tennessee State Museum brings all of the tools that you need to really experience how you can teach in your classroom some of these interesting things about Tennessee. So I think they're going to have some 3D printed material. They're going to be having, I think, virtual reality. Don't quote me on that, but some really cool, unique teaching tools that you can take back to your classroom. So the lunch is included for free. The workshop itself is free. All of the teacher packet that you'll get, the learning material to take back to your classroom, that is free. This is all covered by the Tennessee State Museum, again, out of Nashville. And so if you have not signed up, Miranda's putting the link on there. So you can go, you don't need to pay anything, but you do need to register so they know how many are coming and how many to get lunch for. So if you're in the area, if you are a teacher and you're interested in this, please go to this website that Miranda will be sharing in just a second and put your name in and just register for the event because it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and that does include, and it is a very, very long link. It does include, if you go to the historic Scott County Jail website, we actually have it linked to that Eventbrite page, but that is the link here in the comments section. And so we will probably do another post about that soon. I think they were getting pretty close to getting sold out on spots. I say sold out, but spots taken. Yes.
Yeah, register for spots.
Yeah.
So we haven't checked in a couple of days. Not sure how many spots are left. I think they capped it at 20. If you really want a spot and there's none left, let us know and we'll see if we can talk to our contact at the Tennessee State Museum to allow maybe one or two more in. But this is a lot of fun. We had a great time last year. The teachers that were involved really enjoyed it. So we're looking for another great turnout this year.
And that also includes a tour of the jail. So you'll get to have a nice hour-long history tour of the jail if you've not come and done that. It's definitely a cool way to end the day that they do over there. So I think that's all on the news that
I think so.
That we had. So so if you saw our post yesterday, we did share a video that we did memorializing the officers here, the 14 officers that we've had who did die in the line of duty that had an end of watch date. And so we did that specifically for Law Enforcement Memorial Day, but this whole week has been designated Law Enforcement Appreciation Week.
Yeah, absolutely. So according to the Officer Down website, the Officer Down Memorial website, there have been 58 deputies or law enforcement officials killed in the line of duty nationwide this year so far. We've also had 6 K-9 officers who've been killed in the line of duty this year so far. 4 of those have been from Tennessee. So we recognize all of the law enforcement officials who, not only this year, but throughout history, have had an end of watch. And what that means is they've been killed in the line of duty or have died in the line of duty. And so, as Miranda said, we did a memorial YouTube video. We also did one of our Jailhouse informants. We did a rundown of all of the officers here in Scott County and about their lives and about their end of watch. So I think what we're going to do now is just replay that. So we will be live in the chat. So if you want to watch, that's if you want to chat on it, we'll be live on the chat. But this is actually a replay of the Jailhouse informant that we recorded earlier a couple years ago.
Yeah. So the first thing that we're going to actually show is the memorial video that shows all of them there.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that's over, we'll cut into the replay where we actually break down the stories of those 14 different officers. And, to me, I don't know, but to me, that seems like a really large number for a county to have, 14.
It does. But we're in kind of a different part of the world here.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of different vigilante justice and such. Obviously, the moonshine industry that was very big here in the early 1900s. Richard Ellis was killed in 1925 by a moonshiner here in front of the jail. So I think a lot of retribution killings or deaths occurred here.
Lawlessness.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So for a small rural county, you're right. And it's interesting because in our main museum room, we actually have a timeline that includes all of the law enforcement officers who've been killed here in the line of duty. And when everybody sees that we have 14 of those, it really is eye-opening. The people are really shocked that we have that many here in this county.
It is. We, if you've been here at the jail, you'll see we do have a law enforcement appreciation room that's specifically designated to law enforcement appreciation for not only our officers who were killed in the line of duty, but also officers all around, just really kind of humanizing them and showing what they do. And so, collecting patches and challenge coins and keeping track of the line of duty deaths. We keep track. We change those numbers whenever a new one is announced so people can come in and see that. As we add more things here to the jail, we've got some more things we're going to be adding about the stories of each of these folks.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, we'll get into the video that we already have planned for tonight. So
if you have any comments, just put them up there and we'll be chatting with you that way.
Yeah. So I'll start the little, let me see here. Okay.
Brief law enforcement officers that we're going to be speaking about tonight. The first one that you noticed there was William Chitwood, and his end of watch was in 1883. And some of the stories that we're going to be talking about, they're very interesting, right? Scott County has some very interesting stories. So in 1883, Deputy William Chitwood, he was shot and killed near Chitwood Station, Tennessee. And what's interesting about this is after he was shot and killed, the killers actually put his body on the railroad tracks, and he was struck by the Cincinnati Southern Railroad train because the killers thought that it would mangle his body so badly that they wouldn't know that he had been actually shot and killed. However, the train didn't really do that much damage to his body, so when they found it, they found out that he had been shot and killed. It is still an unsolved mystery as to who killed him, but he was a Scott County Sheriff's deputy and a federal revenue officer in the eastern portion of Tennessee for several years before he was actually killed. So a very interesting story on that one.
Let's see, and I'm looking to make sure that I'm not okay, because we've unfortunately, we had quite a few of these officers here, 14 in total, and so I'm just making sure that I have everything on here. Yeah, that I have them in order here. So so the next one is in 1890, and that is actually a double end of watch, and that's Andrew Adkins, or what the paper says in some is Adams, but from what we found from our research, it was Adkins, and John Riley Newport. Both of those had been summoned to the J.W. Walker's saloon to arrest Coffee Cordell and John Davis. They were two known desperados. Both were shot and killed by Davis. John Riley Newport was to be married the next day, and he survived long enough to tell his bride goodbye. Adams, whose wife had just died a couple months prior, left 4 children orphaned. Before the killings, Adams had sworn to arrest both Cordell and Davis. Both men had sworn to die before they would be arrested. And so Coffee Cordell was the son of a former Scott County judge, but was considered a bad character for some time. John Davis was later arrested and taken to the Scott County jail.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting about some of these, obviously since we're in the jail, those that committed the crimes against these law enforcement officers, for the most part, they were actually brought here, again, which makes it kind of interesting. So the Andrew Adkins and the John Riley Newport killings were, as Miranda said, in my mind, one of the most tragic ones, because, they were really just doing their duty to go and arrest these guys. And these two, Coffee Cordell and John Davis, and they said, no, we're not going to be taken alive. We're going to go ahead and kill you instead. And just tragically, that the one was about to be married and the other one had just lost his wife. So to me, those are really two sad end of watches.
Yeah, I mean, so many people suffered from this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the whole family of the orphaned kids, and then the wife. Our future wife.
Bride to be, yeah.
Just so many people affected by the fact that these two guys didn't want to be arrested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, so the next one was Joseph Fowler Keaton, and this happened in 1908. And this was another sheriff that was a sheriff deputy that was actually killed ambush style. We've had several of these deputies that were killed in the line of duty, where the assailant just surprises them and attacks them ambush style. And there's not really that much known about this. In fact, this newspaper blurb was really one of the only things that I could find related to Fowler Keaton's death. But they said that the death was instantaneous. He was shot in the back of the neck. 3 suspects were named as being responsible. Somebody by the name of Preston Wilder, Kaywood Reed, and a boy by the name of Clark. And again, they were all brought here to the Huntsville jail after they were arrested for this crime. So again, it's one of those that not a lot of information can be found about this, but another tragic end of watch story.
Yeah, and so so our next one, and actually I think this right here kind of talks about that one actually talked about Nelson, correct? Who had no, I'm sorry, that was Preston. Sorry. The next one here is from 1924, and it's John Akers. John Akers, he had the dual role of being both deputy sheriff for Scott County, as well as the chief of police for the town of Oneida. And so on the day he was killed, Frona Blevins reported to Sheriff R.D. Ellis that she would lead him to a moonshine still operated by Jim Markham. And so the sheriff and several deputies arrived to destroy the still, and John Akers was directed to guard the men destroying the still. As the work had started, someone fired from a nearby brush and killed Akers instantaneously. Searchers were organized to find the killer, but no one was apprehended.
Yeah. Again, this is one of those cases where shot ambush style, and there was no known assailant. They couldn't track him down. They couldn't find out who was responsible for him. So this deputy ended up dying in the line of duty, and nobody was brought to justice for their death. So again, a very sad circumstance when it came to John Akers.
Yeah, and what's interesting about these as well is the fact that a lot of our early inmates at that time, they were moonshiners. And so, the officers were really disrupting their way of life at this point in time. And so it was, in doing the research, we're finding, it was a very dangerous job to be law enforcement at that time when moonshine ruled the day. So, just a turn of irony with this police chief. Our next story really kind of plays into that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the story of R.D. Ellis, Richard Ellis. Anybody who's been to the jail really knows the story because this is one that we highlight pretty heavily here at the historic Scott County Jail. But John Akers, who we just talked about, he was a deputy for R.D. Ellis. And so R.D. Ellis, he was elected sheriff in 1924, and he really took a hard stance against bootlegging and moonshiners, which really put him in the crosshairs of the moonshining community. He was also a Baptist minister, and so he really led by faith as well. And so at about 7:30 on August 11th, 1925, Sheriff Ellis was actually bringing a prisoner into the jail here in Huntsville, the jail that we're currently sitting in, and he had a prisoner by the name of George Foster. And he was bringing George Foster into the jail to charge him for whiskey making. And as he was unlocking the doors here at the jail, two men were hiding in the shadows with shotguns. They jumped out, they fired and killed, they fired 3 shots and killed Sheriff Ellis. They struck him in the back and he died almost instantaneously. But what was a weird turn of circumstances with this story is that there were actually 2 guards that were stationed here inside of the jail at the time, because it had been reported prior that day that a mob was going to be formed to lynch 2 of the inmates that were inside the jail here. There were 2 youths in here that were charged with committing murder. So a mob was going to form to bust in and get those 2 inmates out from the jail. And so when the 2 guards heard the gunshots that killed Sheriff Ellis, they thought it was the mob that was coming in to get these 2 kids that were inmates. So they were getting ready to actually start, really returning fire when the crowd started gathering to find out what happened to Sheriff Ellis. So they were going to return fire, the guards inside the jail. It was actually George Foster, who was the prisoner, who said, "Don't shoot, Sheriff Ellis was just killed." And so George Foster never made any attempt to run. He stayed right where he was. And so the guards that were in the jail actually took off in pursuit of the people that killed Sheriff Ellis, but they were never found. They did arrest a man by the name of Bernard Keaton for the murder of Sheriff Ellis, but there was not enough evidence against him to actually charge him and arrest him or convict him. So today, the murder of Sheriff Ellis actually remains an unsolved mystery here in Scott County.
Yeah. And so, we often share this story and talk about how he had been warned that his life, if he took that strong stance on moonshining or the abolition of moonshining, that his life could be in danger, just as the police chief Akers was just prior to that. And so, it's really interesting because we were actually just talking about this as we were doing the research about how, there were so many deaths of the police chief, sheriff, game warden, that sort of thing, how they all occurred within a very short period of time there in the 20s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just because of the history of the jail, we do believe that, bringing in the paranormal part of this, we do believe that Sheriff Ellis does stay here and protect the jail. We've had several stories of people reporting hearing him humming, hearing him singing, whistling, as well as seeing shadow figures inside the jail. Because after he was killed, his body was brought into the jail and prepared for burial. You can see right here, this is the burial picture of R.D. Ellis.
Yeah. And so a couple interesting facts about him is he was a very tall man, and one of the shadow figures that we do see around here is a very tall man. Our doors are 7 foot tall, and we've captured photos near the doors to put them around 6'5", 6'6". Plus the fact that he was a Baptist preacher, and he had the nickname of preacher. That is one of the very, very common EVPs, or disembodied voices, that folks get around here whenever they investigate. And they also, religious music is something that is a huge trigger item here. And it's no secret that a lot of the folks here in this area and here in the jail were religious people. But the fact that he was a preacher and a sheriff, it does kind of lead us to believe that religious music does kind of trigger activity from him. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna get back on track here.
Yeah.
Our next one is also I find it to be a very fascinating story. I mean, again, we're at no shortage of interesting true crime stories here in Scott County. But this is the end of watch of Deputy John West, and that did happen in 1927. Deputy West was wounded when he was struck when a bullet struck his hip during an altercation at a movie theater in Robbins. The Robbins Elementary School, it did double as a movie theater on the second floor there in the old building. It did double as that back in the 1920s. And so on that night in particular, they were showing a comedy show. And so Deputy West was taken to Knoxville for an operation, but he did die because of the bullet. It did penetrate his intestines, which it couldn't be repaired. John West was shot by another deputy, Deputy Ben Fowler. And so he was actually one of the only inmates here to truly be executed by the state. It was a sanctioned execution, and he did die of electric chair in Nashville. Fowler was at the movie theater. He was at the movie theater because he had been asked to preserve order during the movie. And then during the movie, some children had started laughing. So Deputy Ben Fowler told them that he would arrest them if they wouldn't be quiet. He then looked at the local doctor, Dr. Faust, who had been sitting close to the children, and said, that means you too, big boy. Well, Dr. Faust did smile, and he said, he just really didn't take the threat seriously. He's been quoted as saying, Ben, you wouldn't do that. And so Fowler drew his gun, shot Dr. Faust in the face 5 times, and killed him instantly. Deputy John West was also at the theater and jumped in to intervene, but he was also struck by a bullet and died the next day. When others in the theater tried to subdue Fowler by shooting him, none of the bullets stuck because Fowler was wearing body armor. Ben Fowler was sentenced to death via electric chair. And so, in looking at some of the different history of Ben Fowler, he was called Six Gun Fowler, and he was known to carry 2 6-shooters on his side and wear full body armor. And so when fire was returned to him, the body armor is what protected him. He was also known to bring in a lot of moonshiners, and from some of the different accounts, he was actually a pretty bad partaker of the moonshine as well. And he had also been known to have killed 5 other moonshiners previous to killing this deputy. So just a interesting story. And just to kind of hit on the paranormal aspect of it, I went to Robbins Elementary School where the movie was shown, and our librarian that, throughout my time there, and especially throughout her time there, she would often share the story of this and talk about some of the residual hauntings and stuff that was experienced in the building before they tore it down.
Yeah, I think what's so sad about this one is you do have this Deputy John West who was killed by another deputy in Ben Fowler, and I just think that just makes it so tragic. So you've got an end of watch that occurred because your fellow deputy just was really on a power trip. So I think that's what really makes this one pretty sad in my mind.
And the loss of 2 deputies.
Yeah, absolutely, the loss of 2 deputies. Because Ben Fowler was executed pretty quickly, almost 2 months after this. So it was a pretty quick execution, as it should have been. All right, so our next one, this is Levi Birchfield. This happened in 1928. And again, this is another interesting story out of Scott County, tragic yet interesting. So Levi Birchfield was the officer, and in May of 1928, he arrested a guy named Pemberton in Oneida because Pemberton was smuggling whiskey. He took a gallon of whiskey from Pemberton's trunk and took him to trial. And during the trial, a man by the name of Lem Phillips actually ended up stealing the whiskey and taking off with it. And so Deputy Birchfield, he tracked down Lem Phillips and arrested him and charged him with transporting whiskey and fined him $50. And so Phillips said, okay, well, if you'll take me to my dad's house, I can get that money for the fine and I'll pay you right there. So Deputy Birchfield said, fine. So they went to the house, and when they went inside, the senior Phillips, he heard a gunshot, and when he went to investigate, he found Officer Birchfield dead instantly on his kitchen floor. So they did arrest Lem Phillips for the murder of Officer Birchfield, but during the trial, Phillips stated that Birchfield had been drinking, and that when they went into the house, that Birchfield was actually going to pull a gun on him, on Phillips. And so that the officer was going to attempt to shoot him, so he shot first in self-defense. They did go to trial. He was tried for the murder. Again, he claimed self-defense, and it only took the jury about 20 minutes to acquit him of murdering Officer Birchfield. So again, one of those interesting, tragic stories that really has come out of Scott County.
Yeah, he said kind of situation.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a he said officer dead type of a story.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, because dead people can't defend themselves.
Yeah,
you know, at that point.
Exactly. So nobody knows really what happened, but the jury did acquit Phillips of the murder.
Wow. And so the next one, this is one that actually I've seen several different articles in the paper recently about this, and we'll kind of get into that as we get into the story. But this one is on Lindsay Phillips, which was in 1936. And Lindsay Phillips was a game warden, and in 1936 he had taken out a warrant to arrest the county sheriff, Herbert Bilbrey, and Dorsey Rosser for violating the state's game laws. He went to a roadhouse operated by Ralph Harrelson, which was in the Helenwood area. And at the roadhouse on that day, Dorsey Rosser, owner Ralph Harrelson, Sheriff Bilbrey, Circuit Court Clerk Manford Sexton, and Lee Shootman, they were all there at the roadhouse on that day. Witnesses said that Phillips started to draw his weapon, and when the shooting started, Phillips was struck 16 times. Dorsey Rosser and Ralph Harrelson were charged with the shooting and taken to the Huntsville jail. Sheriff Bilbrey refused to discuss the incident with anyone, so it's really unknown exactly what happened, and information about the shooting has basically disappeared. Both Ralph Harrelson and Dorsey Rosser were acquitted of the murder, and Dorsey Rosser later went on to become a sheriff of Scott County, actually multiple times. Mm-hmm. What's fascinating about this one is the story really kind of started to resurface because our current game warden is a relative mm-hmm. of Lindsay Phillips.
Right. Yeah. So, again, we are talking about rural Tennessee. And so you have a lot of families that are kind of intertwined here, and a lot of stories that are intertwined here. So the fact that you've got the game warden taking out an arrest warrant on Sheriff Bilbrey is one in and of itself extremely interesting. But then you've got all of these essentially bigger name players in the county who were there that day. The sheriff, Dorsey Rosser, the circuit court clerk was there. So they all kind of essentially covered for each other because nobody actually knows what happens. There's very, very few articles about this particular murder. But, as Miranda said, nobody was brought to justice for this. They were both acquitted, and Dorsey Rosser becomes the sheriff later on. Just really kind of interesting.
Yeah, we actually, too, to kind of put a paranormal element into this again, we did have a team here it was a couple months ago, a team out of Nashville area. They always come to us and tell us if they get some interesting names. Plus, we have a timeline that's got all the sheriffs, all the different significant events here at the museum. And so one of the names that the people had gotten was the name Herbert, which is not a very common name. And so when they got the name Herbert, I said, well, we went in, we looked at the timeline, and it's like we did have a sheriff named Herbert Bilbrey. And so I kind of started researching on it, and I only found the one article that talked about the murder and talked about being served the warrant and that sort of thing, and couldn't find anything else. So it's really interesting that they did get that whenever they were doing their paranormal research. I think there's a bigger story that somebody wants to tell.
Absolutely. That is another, like I said, the fact that there's no information about it when all of these people were there. That's the most interesting part.
Hanging out at the bar.
Yeah, hanging out at the Roadhouse. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. And that's that one.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is actually two deputies lost their lives on the same day in this one. This was in 1962, and the end of watch of Alvin Jeffers and Levi Harness. Levi Harness is actually the one that's pictured here. But so what happened is we've got some Scott County Sheriff's Department officials. They're going to the house of Bill Dingus, and he and his wife were wanted for various things. Bill Dingus was wanted for violating probation and non-support payments to a previous wife. And his wife, Flonnie Dingus, was wanted for obtaining money under false pretenses. So you've got some Scott County officials and officers going to the house of the Dinguses. And when they knocked on the door, there were shots that started to be fired from the inside. So you had Constable Alvin Jeffers and a guy by the name of Officer Goad and Officer Massengill. They were standing on the front porch when the shots were fired. And Alvin Jeffers was struck 3 times. And so Officer Goad and Officer Massengill decided we're going to take him to the hospital. So they told Officer Levi Harness and another deputy by the name of Officer Chambers to guard the house. Don't let anybody out of the house. And so while they took Alvin Jeffers to the hospital, he actually ended up dying en route to the hospital. But at the same time, while Levi Harness was watching the front of the house, the Dinguses came out. They shot Levi Harness 3 times, one striking him in the head and killing him. And then they took off on the run. So they were on the run for several days. The Dinguses, you'll see them pictured here. They were on the run for several days, and their kinfolk said, "You need to turn yourself in." So they said, "We'll turn ourselves in, but we don't want to go to the Huntsville jail. So you can come and get us. We're going to be here at this time." So they did end up turning themselves in. And they both were tried and convicted of 2 counts of murder. Bill Dingus was 70 years old at the time, and his son was 40. They both received 20 years for each conviction. Bill Dingus actually ended up dying in 1970 while in prison, but his son Arthur was paroled in 1971. So again, a very, very tragic story. You've got 2 deputies. Actually, multiple deputies who are going to just do their jobs, and they're caught in the line of fire, and 2 of them actually tragically were killed.
And what's kind of crazy to me, other than the deputy that was executed in the electric chair, obviously there were some that weren't ever found that are unsolved mysteries, but it's interesting to me that these people who committed these crimes, they really didn't get very much time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know. I'm not sure why. I haven't researched it fully as to why, Arthur Dingus was paroled in 1971 when he got 20 years for killing 2 officers. That really doesn't make any sense to me. So, again, very tragic loss of life here, and 2, heroes that died in the line of duty for sure.
And that's just something people will need to come to the historic Scott County Jail to find out a little more about some of these stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the Dingus story is one that we have highlighted pretty prominently here at the jail.
Yeah. And so, so our next one is, it comes from 1964, and it's Deputy Sheriff Earl Koger. He was shot and killed as he and another deputy investigated a disturbance in the Elgin community. They had responded to the area after receiving reports that a man had threatened several people with a shotgun. They went to the man's home to question him, but the man's wife said that he wasn't there. The man suddenly emerged and shot Deputy Koger and killed him. The man was arrested 1 hour later and charged with Deputy Koger's murder. Didn't really see a whole lot on this one as well.
Yeah, no, this is one that, there's just maybe 1 or 2 articles on, and that's it. Deputy Koger, he is pictured here. He's the one on the right, holding the moonshine here. So he was, a valuable member of the law enforcement community, and yet you've got another senseless shooting and an end of watch. But to your point, not a whole lot of written documentation on his death or what happened to the person who was arrested.
Yeah, we do have, he was quite an active officer, because we do actually have some of his arrest warrant papers here at the jail where he was, arresting different folks. So we actually have some of those on display. And that's actually quite a common picture that we're showing right there on the thing throughout the jail. We've got pictures of officers with just gallons upon gallons of whiskey and moonshine.
Yeah, it is. So, like I said, just very, very tragic story again. Okay, so this story, we're going to be kind of delicate with this one. This is a story in Scott County that has a lot of different facets and a lot of different sides. So really what we're going to do is just tell you the facts as we have them through newspaper articles and magazines that we've read. But we still have family members of John Yancey who are alive, as well as the perpetrator of his death. So we're just going to kind of go through this one, but this one is a very delicate story, and we do have it highlighted pretty prominently here at the historic Scott County Jail. So Sergeant Herbert John Yancey, he was accidentally shot and killed when he and two other deputies went to a home on Williams Creek Road. So they had gotten some reports that there was a suspected meth operation going on inside this house. And so one deputy went inside the house to actually search. It was a mobile home. He went in to search the mobile home. That deputy was Marty Carson. And he went inside. He was going to go clear the house. And once he was inside, he thought he noticed someone hiding in the closet with what to him appeared to be a weapon. So the deputy took cover, and two women apparently were in the house, and they started screaming. Well, Sergeant Yancey, John Yancey, he went inside the house because he thought Marty Carson was in trouble. And as soon as he entered the house, Deputy Carson stated that he thought John Yancey's silhouette was actually an armed suspect. So he fired one round. It struck Deputy Yancey just above the vest and killed him instantly. Three suspects did flee the scenes, and they were quickly apprehended, and they were charged with manufacturing methamphetamines, but they were not charged in connection with Deputy Yancey's death. So there was no criminal charges brought against anybody with regard to John Yancey's death, but there were civil suits that were brought against Marty Carson in the sheriff's department. And in those, Marty Carson was found guilty civilly of causing the death of his partner, John Yancey. So as I said before, this was a very, very high profile case because Marty Carson was the son of the sheriff, Jim Carson at the time. So there was a lot of different rumors and speculation as to if it was really an accident or not. This article was kind of front page news for a long time. It was actually featured in the September 2008 GQ magazine as a featured article, and it really kind of goes through all of the kind of walks you through what happened, the conspiracy theories, and so on and so forth. So nobody, like I said, nobody was criminally charged for this murder, but civilly they were held responsible.
Yeah, and I mean, even today, that's one that is, again, taking a delicate, step with that, because it is one that there are a lot of conspiracies or a lot of theories and stories behind it and everything as to what happened. which, again, we're not going to get into on this show because that would be a whole show in and of itself. But we do, as Christy said, we do have this one highlighted very thoroughly here at the jail. And it was actually kind of hard to find a lot of articles on until we started kind of going through all those donated newspapers. We were able to find a little more information on it. I remember when it happened back in 2003, it was on Thanksgiving. And so I remember being at my aunt's house and hearing the sirens come, during Thanksgiving dinner. So yeah, very, very interesting story.
Yep.
And so our last one, and this is one, this was our last and final officer. This is one who actually, he did not pass by, being killed or murdered in the line of duty by a person per se, but this is Sheriff Mike Cross, and back in 2013, he actually ended up dying of cancer. And so he was on duty, and from the reports that we've heard, he never quit working while he was doing that and while he was going through his treatments, but he did end up having an end of watch by passing of cancer.
Yeah, that happened in 2013. And he was such a great sheriff for the county of Scott County. He has been recognized by the Tennessee House of Representatives and the Tennessee Senate, as well as Tennessee senators, as being a great officer and really a dedicated officer to Scott County. And so they did recognize him for his sacrifice and his service, even though he wasn't killed in the line of duty. He did have an end of watch in 2013.
Microphone is muted. All right. Thank you all for watching that with us. It's always really interesting to go back and look at those stories that really shaped a lot of people's lives and were affected by those senseless deaths.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know several people have mentioned it here in the comments. It's not just the officer, right? It's his family. So every time somebody puts on a uniform, his or her family, every time somebody puts on a uniform and goes out to serve and protect their community, their family goes with them. My brother was a 32-year sheriff's deputy in Orange County. My grandpa was a 30-year chief of police in Glendale, West Virginia. And so I know about family sacrifice when it comes to sending a loved one into the community in a uniform. So thank you to everybody who wears the uniform and their families, because this is a sacrifice that they all make. It's just not that person.
Yeah. And just kind of want to hit on a few points from what we talked about. So of course, this was originally broadcast there in this day in 2022, and we've actually added quite a few things since then. We do have a very prominent display after this broadcast came out. The widow of Hubert John Yancey, Miss Lori Yancey, she did reach out to us, and they did put on loan here in the museum his uniform. I think it was like his uniform. It was a couple uniforms actually.
Yeah, she gave us a couple uniforms, one of his jackets. And so we do have that displayed along with the story. We have the GQ magazine article from 2008 that did feature the John Yancey story, as well as a podcast came out last year. It's called Witnessed Friendly Fire. So if the John Yancey case is something that you'd like to follow further, and you are a true crime podcast listener, we highly recommend Witnessed Friendly Fire. It's season 2, and it's by Campfire Media, and it's a great 8-episode podcast of that story, the John Yancey story. So it covers everything. It has the 911 calls. Lori Yancey speaks on there. A lot of the prominent players from that tragedy actually speak in that podcast. So it's a great listen if you haven't heard it. Again, it's Witnessed Friendly Fire season 2.
Yeah. And it's, if you like true crime podcasts, it's a very good one. It's 8-part series, and it's actually told by the same guy who wrote the GQ article. So we do highly recommend that. And then, just like I said, other displays. We've had people who have come in that have put things on loan. We're constantly, when we can work it in with all the other stuff, we're doing researching and trying to find more things to put on display and such. So we really definitely encourage you to come check that out. Check out our timeline. And there's also the law enforcement memorial, actual memorial that is in the John Yancey Memorial Park, which is over by the Scott High School. So they have a really nice memorial that we showed there during our memorial video as well.
So again, thank you to all the service members who are out there for your service and your sacrifice. We really do appreciate it and know that the community does have your back.
Yeah, absolutely. So like we said, a lot of really cool and interesting things going on here. Don't forget, on Saturday we will be closed, but we will be opening back up on Sunday at regular time. We will be open regular time tomorrow, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern time. We do have some availability for some tours. I know on Sunday night at Historic Rugby After Dark, as well as the historic Scott County Jail. Those are on the website there. You can find all that information on History, Highways, and Haunts. Are there tours tomorrow night?
Yeah, we have tours at Rugby tomorrow night. Okay. So if you're interested and you're in the area, Memorial Day weekend quickly filling up. So I know that 2 of our tours at Rugby are completely full. We do have some availabilities on the other one. And then here at the jail, we have some as well. So if you're interested in any of those, get on the calendar as soon as possible, because Memorial Day weekend is filling up pretty quickly. But as Miranda said, Saturday, if you're in the Franklin, Kentucky area, please stop by and see us. And then next Thursday at 6 o'clock in Anderson County, Clinton, Tennessee, I will be speaking at the Historical Society. The address is on my Facebook page, as well as Soul Sisters Paranormal. So if you are interested in hearing my presentation on After Dark tourism and historic preservation through After Dark tourism, please check that out. And if you'd like me to come and speak at your Historical Society or your historic location, just reach out.
Yeah. And we do have, and I just kind of want to hit back real quick on Memorial Day weekend. Brimstone is having their really big event, their white knuckle event. And so we always try to do everything we can so that our investigators here can have a really good experience. And so if you've been here and you've been here during the peak of ATV season, bless you.
Thank you.
It's pretty loud and obnoxious with the ATVs. So we've actually taken all of the investigations off the schedule for Memorial Day weekend here at the jail. But we are offering guided ghost hunts and, like Chris said, flashlight tours. So we're trying to kind of heavy up on that during the weekend of Memorial Day. So if you can't get in there at Rugby, definitely check out here at the jail, because we do have some really cool things planned for that weekend.
Yep. So it looks like we are at the top of the hour, but thank you all so much for hanging with us tonight, for watching our dedication to our law enforcement officers here in Scott County, and for just keeping up with what we're doing on our social media pages. Thank you for all of your support. Again, we cannot do this without you guys. So thank you for always being there with us.
Yeah. And just as a programming note, I'm not sure if there will be a Jailhouse Informant next week or not. Since Chris is going to be there, we may still do one. Not really sure just yet. So just kind of stay tuned and we'll let you know on that for sure. So.
And Ghost Biker Explorations on the Ghost Biker Explorations Facebook page at 9 o'clock.
Yes, we'll be covering some cool things, talking a little bit more about the ride and some other Ghost Biker events that's coming up. So 9 p.m. Eastern time on the Ghost Biker Explorations pages.
All right, everybody. Have a great night. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yep. See you soon.
Bye.